Good morning, distinguished speakers and my dear friends. It is my pleasure to welcome you all to this webinar this morning. I know all of you are yet to recover from yesterday's sensational IPL opening match. Well, as we gradually adapt to the new normal, ABN, the business networking arm of IITA, continues its engaging web series to keep you connected with eminent minds and emerging trends in the comfort of your homes. Today too, we have an impressive lineup of speakers. As we all know, the refining industry is a double-edged sword. While it has contributed significantly to the enrichment of our lives, it has also been criticized for causing major environmental and safety hazards. It is in this context that ABN thought it fit to organize today's session to give you a heads up on the challenges and opportunities in the oil industry in the context of the new normal. With the experts sharing their thoughts and experiences, I am sure you will have plenty of takeaways. The oil and gas industry is experiencing its third price collapse in 12 years. After the first two shocks, the industry rebounded and businesses continued. This time it is different because it combines a supply shock with an unprecedented demand drop and a global humanitarian crisis. Additionally, the sector's financial and structural health is worse than in previous crises. Today, with prices touching 30-year low and accelerating societal pressures, change is inevitable. The COVID-19 crisis accelerates what was already shaping up to be one of the industry's most transformative moments. While the depth and duration of this crisis are uncertain, without fundamental change, it will be difficult to return to the encouraging scene that has historically prevailed. On its current course and speed, the industry could now be entering an era defined by intense competition, technology-led rapid supply response, investor skepticism, and increasing public and government pressure regarding environmental impact. However, under most scenarios, oil and gas will remain a multi-trillion-dollar market for decades. Given its role in supplying affordable energy, it is too important not to fail. The question of how to create value in the new normal is therefore fundamental. The industry will need to dig deep and tap into its proud history of bold structural moves, innovation, change, and profitable operations in the toughest conditions. The winners will be those that use this crisis to boldly reposition their portfolios and transform their operating models. We have a panel of distinguished speakers, Mr. S. Varadarajan, Mr. Anant Baliga, and Mr. Panjabikesan Rajaraman. You will be happy to note that today's TriStars are among the galaxy of sparkling stars that our esteemed university has produced. We don't have to look outside for heroes. They are right amongst us here. They have proved us that if you dream big and stay focused, you're not far away from becoming a star in whatever field you choose. Mr. S. Varadarajan is a graduate chemical engineer from the 1979 batch. He joined Zuari Agrochemicals Goa in the ammonia plant in the operation department. After a brief stint, moved to MRL, now CPCL in 1981. He had served in several departments like operation, technical services, planning in various capacities, and also part of the Refinery 2 expansion project team. While being part of the technical services group, was actively involved in the debottlenecking of the crude and vacuum unit and FCC unit. Had a brief stint at OCC where he was deputed from MRL. After serving MRL for 15 long years, moved to UOP in 1996, worked in the Guildford office and in corporate headquarters in various groups, including technical services, sales support, and currently heading the sales for Indian region for UOP's products and services. As part of the technical services assignment, has been involved in several refineries and has produced excellent solutions. He is currently the Director of Sales, Lifecycle Solutions and Technologies in UOP LLC. Mr. Rajaraman Panjabikesan is Director of Sales for Honeywell UOP India, leading the technology business sales. Rajaraman joined UOP India in 2000. Over 20 years at UOP, has worked in sales support, sales, regional services, and in business development. Prior to UOP, joined the hydrocarbon industry in 1983, worked at various refineries across the region in MRL, now CPCL, KNPC, Petronas, and the specialization include process engineering, energy auditing, profit management, participation in strategic planning, project management, commissioning, startup, troubleshooting, problem solving, and technical services, refining and petrochemical economics and optimization. Rajaram earned a chemical degree in 1983 with distinction from Annamalai University and holds 2 patents to his credit. Mr. Anant Baliga is a 1981 batch chemical engineering graduate from Annamalai University. He started his career in operations department of Kothari Heavy Chemicals Limited, later acquired by Speak Group, and continued until he shifted to Reliance Industry Limited, Mumbai in 1989. He has worked in various functions starting from project to operations across Reliance Group facilities at Hazira and Jamnagar. He moved over to Jamnagar in 1997 when the world's largest glasswood refinery was being designed. He contributed in its basic configuration, design, licensor, and engineering consultant selection. He played a key role in integrating construction planning and startup planning that helped smooth startup of entire refinery complex within 6 months' time. He also played a very important role in the debottlenecking activity, increasing the original capacity from 540 kilobarrels per day to 660 kilobarrels per day. He also worked closely with licensors and engineering companies like UOP, Bechtel, etc., and was instrumental in developing Reliance's second refinery. He was part of the commissioning team for the new units in 2008. Since commissioning of this second refinery, Jamnagar remains the world's largest refinery in a single location. Mr. Anand Baliga, presently located in Reliance's headquarters in Mumbai, is in a senior role establishing and overseeing operational management, operational risk management, process safety management, operational reliability management, etc. All of which are fundamental management systems required to operate any large refinery petroleum facility on par with global standards, similar to that of Shell, BP, Exxon, Chevron, DuPont, etc. Our distinguished speakers, with a combination of academic knowledge and practical know-how, will take you through specific challenges and inventive ways to overcome them, be it technical, operational, or research. The webinar will address topics of current relevance and critical to building a profitable future. With a good lineup of speakers with distinguished experience, I'm not going to extend my speech because I would like them to take over. As we discuss different emerging views and innovations in the oil industry, the opportunities and challenges, I believe today is going to be a day of learning for each one of us. Thank you very much. Over to you, Mr. Varalajan.
Gopi, it is also a pleasure to announce that Mr. Varadarajan has 4 patents to himself.
I'm sorry, I missed.
I just now got a message from Mr. Chandrasekhar, 79.
Okay.
Sir, Vardu sir, please, you can share your presentation also.
Let me start. First of all, can all of you hear me first? Am I audible?
Yes,
yeah. Yes, we are audible, sir.
Okay. And second thing is, can you see my screen?
Yes, sir, we can see your screen, and I think now you are trying to share.
Correct. Okay. First of all, thank you very much. In fact, very, very kind words, Gopi, and I never thought I will be introduced like this, because when I gave my profile, there are many things which got added, and also which I don't know whether I deserve for or whatever it is. But I said, yes, I will do this because people told me this is an interactive session. In sense, everybody is going to contribute, and being in this industry, I can only let you know what's going on right now, what I know about it, or to our best of our knowledge. So it's a very limited knowledge sharing from my side, and so I want everyone to ask questions during the Q&A and put their views also. This is especially when it comes to the challenges and opportunities. It is you have to view these things in a larger perspective, in sense, in an overall gamut of things. Maybe I have approached Sarari in a very narrow perspective of a technology, but I'm sure Balika, coming from the industry, expect him to put the operators or the operating units constraints, their challenges, and where he sees challenges and opportunities. So with that, let me start. And first of all, thank you very much to all the audience. I never expected, even in my company, if I call for a meeting, hardly 5% attend the call, especially on a topic like this, because it is talking about the future, and it all depends on how one is going to view the crystal ball. And the crystal ball can be different from individuals to individuals, but I'm really, really amazed to see so many people, especially even not connected with the alma mater like Venkatesan, Kalaimani, Anand, and many others. I'm immensely pleased to have, they are my good friends in the industry, and I'm extremely pleased that they want to stay connected with the industry, and in particular with the university we all come from. So thank you very much. And with this, let me start. And it's purely interactive, or you have, should have their own views, and please don't hesitate if you have a different perspective or view on this. So when we talk about things, especially in the oil industry, we have to see how the fundamentals are, or how the global economy is behaving with respect to our industry. So if you all look, the world economic growth has been in the order of 2s and 3s, like 2% or 3%, except the developing world like India, China, even the China's growth in the last few years before were very not in the range of used to be, like in the double-digit growths. India also saw a lot of growth in the yesteryears, and last year was a very constrained year, and this year it's all known. We need not even talk about it. But we expect there is a contraction overall in the global economy. And before I present this, I have collated various economic consultants and advisors who are experts in this field. So it doesn't mean this is the Honeywell view or UOP's view, or it's my view. It is mostly the information available in the public domain. So with that preamble, when we analyze the growth, we expect 2020, there is going to be a huge contraction in the industry, and especially in the oil sector, or the demand for oil is likely to contract all-time high by about 10%. And that's one challenge for most of the refiners today, that there is a contraction in the growth. It's not because of only COVID. It is mainly because of the COVID. But if you look at this industry 4 years ago, 5 years ago, there has been a gradual decline, and this problem of reduced growth because of the COVID is not only attributable to COVID. The world is also started looking for alternate disruptive technologies like electrical vehicles, more emphasis on renewables. So all these things are going to put constraints on the growth and the performance of the refineries. But it is getting little bit accelerated because of the COVID situation, where the lockdowns have to be imparted within a short span, because it was not anticipated that this has to happen. And so there is a huge contraction in the petroleum demand and this. So what it translated is the crude prices came down. We have put around 40 here, but you all know it came to even $5, or there is even a negative pricing in certain crudes because they're not able to store those crudes. So that is the level of impact this sudden retardation in the growth has got to the industry as such. This is an update about the virus today, but this, from the time this slide was prepared and where we are today, is completely different. And you guys must be getting the latest outputs from the newspapers and various media channels that this has gone much beyond the numbers we have on this table, because every day it is going up in leaps and bounds, especially in countries like India and United States, where the cases are going up. So the impact is, it's not flattened, it is not stopped, it has not or it is not reducing. So the threat is still there, and with the situation on the vaccines and the medicines, still there are a lot of uncertainties, especially for a country like India and also to United States, where these things are not that strict as compared to some of the very controlled economies like China or Taiwan or other countries. But even in the Far East countries, they all started that this is gone, and they started opening up, and they started having relaxations in their lockdown situations. But the things are not that good. Even very matured economies like Japan, they're seeing the cases going up and a lot of people getting affected. So they are trying to bring the lockdown restrictions and all the other things in place. So this has created a lot of impact to all the countries, especially developing countries like India, Brazil, and the China story is not very much known to many of us. What we hear from the media is what we know, but it seems they have put this under control. And probably, if you look at the GDP growth, probably they are the only economy in this sector where they expect a growth in their GDP in the next few quarters. Even the countries like Japan, they projected better growth because there are a lot of restrictions in China, and so being an industrial world, they thought that their economy is going to grow, but the current statistics does not prove that that's the case. But if you take the other Far East countries, it is always, they are far below their standard, or even most of them are going to register a negative growth. And why I brought up this particular consultant's view is they are very pessimistic towards our country. See, this Duggar and Frontier is one of the consultants from UK, where they thought that the economy is going to shrink by 16%. So if you go around the world, you pick your consultant and ask him what is going to be the situation, each one is going to have a different view, but nevertheless, we ourselves know what is going on. And but the one thing which I think as a community from this country we have to do is our image in the international world has to be improved, and we have a lot more things to work on that area especially. This is one of the views of Duggar and Frontier, but there are others in the race, and we will quickly talk about them as well. But now, if you translate this particular COVID situation and see how the products are going to demand, especially the petroleum products, are going to behave in future. In future meaning at least 30 years, 20, at foreseeable future, like 20 years from now. If you see, especially the products like diesel, which is one of the key products of any refinery, there has been a fantastic growth in the previous years, but it is likely to flatten. And that one dip you see in the curve, that is because that is where we are currently. And especially most of the oil sector economists are of the view that it's going to have a V-shaped recovery because it's going to come up soon as the relaxations or the lockdown situation improves, and also to a large extent the infection level comes down. So yeah, but in future it's not going to grow at the same rate. So this threat of a sudden deacceleration or retardation in the growth is expected, and the industry is prepared for it. That is the main message I wanted to say is, yes, we are not going to be terribly worried, oh, COVID has come, so we are doomed and we don't have any future or something like that. No, we anticipated certain changes in our demand or our petroleum products consumption situation, and the industry is not sitting quiet on it. It has taken action, but it is fair to say a situation like a COVID where the demand has suddenly has come down further, it has in fact speeded up the ways of thinking and how to position ourselves in future and where the refineries has to get themselves. So coming back on the statistics, the retardation in the growth is expected, or a negative growth is expected in the petroleum products. It is not one consultant's view, it is multiple consultants' views. See, for example, earlier I was talking about Doug Front, now Wood Mackenzie, who is also a leading consultant. They also expect the demand to come down and not grow in future, because yeah, each economy, like the developing or the developed economies, there is only a certain need for the petroleum products. After some time, then it will flatten or the growth rates will come down. If you look at it from that perspective, China, yes, they are also going to get matured in their development process and grade themselves into developing, from a developing economy to a developed economy. So come 2030, their consumption growth, I'm talking about the growth, it is not per capita consumption, their growth will come down. What that means is the pace in which the refineries are going to come or has to slow down, or they have to accommodate the market depending on the situation, because there is already a capacity available in the world for refining, and most of the capacities are existing not for only a demand reason, for other economical reasons also. There can be a wellhead refinery or a remote place a refinery may be located to scatter to the market. For example, in India, you have a Digboy refinery. It is very difficult to transport all the products in today's world into those locations and take the crude from there and process elsewhere. So in the world, and especially even in developed countries like United States, you find in Montana or any place, there are some refineries which are just topping refineries, or only just refining and making products for the survival of the community or to the region. So these anomalies are going to exist, and but whereas also on the technology front, any new refinery is not coming with the old capacities like 50,000 barrels per day or something. They are gone leaps and bounds. They are gone now 1,000 barrels per day, or even the single trains can also, the economy of the scales have gone so high, and nobody talks about a 3 million refinery like we used to do 30 years ago or 40 years ago. So there is a change in that perspective, as well as there is a change in the demand scenario. And that being said, because of these reasons, the continued growth in especially refining business is not going to be that significant if they don't change the product mix. Meaning, if they continue to make only fuels, there may not be that incentive for them to put new plants. That is what it is emerging based on various analysis. Now, there was always an emphasis when the organizers wanted to talk about what is the situation now? How did it affect? How this corona is going to play a role? So when I looked around the world, I found some consultants speaking, yes, there is an effect which is going to make on the capacity utilization, especially in almost in the developing world like India, China, in those countries, there are going to be a lot of restrictions in the capacity utilization, because we are not an industry where we can produce and store. We have a limited storage, and all of you know, unless we and also, but India has done a lot more effort on its storage capacities when it comes to crude as well as the petroleum products, but still there is an optimum capacity which we can store, beyond which we will be only locking our money in, like putting the gold into a locker or something. So whether we can afford to do it, yes, we can if we are rich, but if you are not rich, you are not going to buy gold and put it in the locker. So similarly, the capacity, the similar analogy, the capacities of the refineries have to be restricted, and it is going to be restricted. and it is going to be in the future also not that efficient as it used to be in the previous years, like 80% or 85%. You all know most or probably the refining industry, if the capacity utilization is less than 90%, we are not going to even make break even, because our commodity we are our both the products and the crude, we have to put a lot more money. Just to quote one of my previous, when I used to work for the public sector in India, my director of finance used to say, you guys can shut down the refinery, I can make money by buying crude and selling and making products by trading. So that is the situation, honestly, guys. Maybe it is very difficult for engineers to digest that type of statement. And when I used to be a young engineer, I used to challenge him, why it is so and all those things. But it is a fact, because lot more money is available in trading, in hedging, in taking calculated risks. And from a technology perspective or from an engineer's perspective, I feel it is, if the refiners cannot use their capacity to the full extent, it's very difficult for them to make money. With that, let's get into a brief about how our country is doing with respect to the petroleum products, and let's talk about ourselves. Before that, I want to check with all of you, is it's okay? It is, the pace is fine, especially Tariq, you can comment, because whether the others are able to see the slide, because I don't have only a monologue going on here. Okay, I think it's going okay. I'm not getting any adverse comments, so let me keep moving. If you look at the Indian economy, how it's going to grow, it is going to grow. It was growing at 8% or 7% in the past, and we saw some shrinkage in this GDP in 2019. And of course, the future is, especially India, this year it is going to have a negative growth. That is for sure, because we had a very terrible infection crisis. So because of that, we expect it to come down to 6.3 or something like that, in the very, very low range. But it's likely to come up. What especially the most of the economists are of the view that immediately you will find a good GDP growth next year, because they think that whatever is got affected, it will recover. And also this year, we had a very good monsoon, and our agriculture production is really good. Of course, the COVID has affected mostly the industrial sector, and maybe it is mainly a hurt to us like engineers, but the agriculture sector is doing reasonably good, and we hope the GDPs will come to a reasonable good level, at least in the next year. Now let's look at it from the oil prices view as it is, before we get into the individual products. How is the crude going to look like? This is like it is like going to an astrologer and asking him how my future is going to be. Each one is going to have a different view, but this is one of the views of a very knowledgeable consultant, IHS, who has been in this market for a long time. So the past, it used to be around $70. There were situations where it was $120, but those days are gone when it wasn't. So it's going to be in the order of 70 to 80, because a lot of changes have happened, because we are not only depending on the conventional sources. The new shale oil which is available has brought down the price of the crude reasonably into a good range, like 70s to 80s, if everything remains same. But that's not going to be the situation. Nothing is going to remain static. The world is changing, and they came down to $60 a barrel. And with the COVID, as I said earlier, it came down very low. like it came to $20. But again, the economists are of multiple views. They thought that the situation is going to change overnight. They thought the COVID will go out, and there was a projection that it will come to $60 soon. But that did not happen. The second projection was there will be a gradual recovery, and in that gradual recovery, it will be about $50. And there is also a V-shaped recovery where they thought it will be, or there was also a pessimistic view that the growth is not going to happen at all, and it will continue to remain at $20, $30. So none of them has happened in that way. The only it is today, if you see, the price is around $50. So there is a gradual demand recovery, but it is not very fantastic. It is not very great, but most of the economists are of the view that yes, it is going to be only gradual. And since we had also a lot of headwind in the past, that is anyhow the product slates was shifting because of the other disruptive technologies, we think that it is going to have a gradual recovery in future. Now, if you look at India in particular, especially when it comes to refining products, you don't see that big effect in the refining products. This is the green is the base chemicals, including petrochemicals, and it is growing at a much faster rate than the petroleum demand growth rates. And in terms of individual products like a gasoline and naphtha, if you see, there is going to be a gasoline growth, and the naphtha is going to be used to make those gasoline, and you don't see that big growth happening, especially on the fuels products. But what we perceive or what we see is a lot more growth in the chemicals, especially the petrochemicals, what we are mostly going to concentrate in our discussion today. And coming back on the products, this was a very short-term analysis, or on a smaller range of this thing between 2014 and 2021. The growth of the diesel has been always very high in India, and it was around 1,600 kilo barrels per day, but it came down very low during the COVID situation, but we expect it to go up. And again, there can be seasonal fluctuations, and there can be a change in the demand, especially the diesel. The diesel is the driving force in most of the refining today. Next comes the gasoline. So it is likely to get to the normal levels only by next year, not immediately. So it is going, the recovery path, especially for the key product like diesel, is going to take a little bit time. And this is what we expected in next few months, which is going to happen. If you look at the capacity, as I mentioned to you, for a good refinery, it's always to be above 100%, because then their profits or the margins can really go up, because the energy is one of the main requirement in the refining business. And if you operate on a low capacities, your per capita energy is going to be high. So if you operate always on a higher capacities, it's always better. But that is why we always push our refineries to a maximum capacities. But that took a big hit. Its capacity utilization came as low as 70% during the COVID situation, especially immediately after the lockdown. And because we are also coming up with a very high inventory on the products, and so we could not sustain our production in continuously on this in the refining industry, and it took a big hit. In fact, many of the refineries went on shutdown, except few of them, and then slowly recovered. And I think currently most of them they have on an average, they come to about 80-85% capacity utilization, including the big private sector refineries like Reliance, Naira, and others. So they tend to, in an average, we are about 80-85%, but still a long way to go. It's not enough for us to make the money we would like to see. And here, this is the trend on the spread. For most of the friends in the industry or from the other industries, that spread is a common traders terminology. That is, what is the margin or what is the money one is going to make when between making certain products in the particular, especially in the refining. And it's mostly a traders terminology, the spread or the crack they call. If you look, and for most of the refiners, especially the diesel crack is very, very critical. So if the diesel crack is not high, then the profitability of refining, operating the refinery will not be that good. So we always faced the constraints on the cracks, because in 14 it used to be a diesel crack used to be 18, 20 like that. When it gradually came down the COVID has brought nearly like a negative crack in some refineries, and in average it came to $3. You just imagine from $20 to $3, it's a very big drop, and the industry was suffering as to how they can make up this, and it continues to be a challenge for the industry. So because of the trend, and also because of the demand coming down, the industry has to look into the new avenues to make themselves more economical, because it cannot sustain on the previous cracks. Similar is the situation on the in the jet cracks and also on the gasoline cracks. The gasoline crack is one of the main driver in US, whereas in Far East and other developing worlds, diesel crack is very critical. And also jet. Jet means it's a kerosene in common terminology, but in other countries except in India, mostly jet is used as an aviation fuel than as household fuel or used for cooking or other purposes. But that crack also is important, but it is not also showing much improvement compared to its past levels where it used to be. Now I will I don't know that from a timing perspective, maybe I am taking too much time. So I will quickly pass through some of the petrochemicals demands, especially when you see petrochemicals. The petrochemicals can be classified as an aromatics based, and another is a olefin based, because that is how they are the building blocks for various petrochemicals which have to be manufactured. And if you see in the paraxylene especially, which is one of the products which most of the refiners or petrochemical people will be making out, the growth rate is the red is on the growth. It is about 6% for a country like India, whereas its production capacity is growing only at 2%. So when my colleague Rajaraman is going to talk, he's going to talk about the new technologies and how we can bridge this capacity versus the growth or the demand which is there. And if you look from a segmental analysis, these are all going at a very good rate, like 7% for filament, and also for resins, it's about a 9% growth rate is expected. So this is a very healthy demand, especially in countries like, this is for our country in particular, India. And so there is a lot of opportunities here when it comes to this paraxylene as such. Then going on the other olefin-based petrochemical products, you all know there are a lot of emphasis for refineries to add gas crackers or naphtha crackers. So the olefins which are getting produced from the refineries are going to go up at a much faster rate, and we are going to see a lot more growth, and especially products like ethylene is going to grow at a rate of about 5%. So one may ask, come on, let me understand what is what this has cost in a current situation of COVID. Because these products are solid when it comes to us, and mostly this thing. So most of the refiners or petrochemical plants, they have not restricted their production except for a short span, and we expect this to have the regular growth which was expected as before. So this demand is not going to, it's not going to be very sensitive to the COVID situation, and it is likely to grow at the rate at which it was anticipated earlier, because the retardation was not that high because of this situation. Similar is the propylene. Propylene has also have a very good demand, and it is one of the very important olefin based monomer which is required for the industry, and it's likely to grow at a 5% growth rate, especially in India. And these slides, when my colleague talk, Mr. Rajaraman, he will try to connect it with the technologies available and how, as an industry, the refineries and petrochemicals can get more profitable with the technologies available. Of course, benzene is always a very controversial product because of it getting directly into the carcinogenicity of its this thing. But nevertheless, many of them had a very negative, or the industry has a very negative view about benzene. But benzene has been one of the key helping hand for the refineries to make their profits, especially people who had a very negative perception about benzene, but they help in it. Sorry, the benzene help the refiners to make money, and though there is some excess projected, but if you put the downstream plants and plan it, I don't think we will be a surplus in benzene. But nevertheless, if in certain processes benzene can be product or a byproduct which cannot be avoided, then now there are certain technologies where you can convert benzene into a very valuable petrochemicals like paraxylene or whatever you want, and how you can maximize your money out of this. That is why I thought I will combine my discussion or interaction with you with the technologies available from my colleague. Another important chemical which is mostly used in the detergent industry is the linear alkyl benzene, which is most of you know, Tamil Nadu Petrochemicals came on stream 30 years ago or 35 years ago. That time India was a very big hub for LAB. Slowly that niche position is going up. So now from surplus on LAB, we are going to be a deficit in LAB. So countries which are having advantage like Iran or Middle East is trying to make more of this and dump it in India. But government also is coming up with anti-dumping duties and all those things. But nevertheless, there is a good potential that there can be 1 or 2 units in near future to cope up with the demand. And see, we are all a middle class economy, meaning we need detergents to maintain our day-to-day chorus. So we need this product as well in the industry. Going further, there is some requirement for butadiene as well, and its growth is also projected in the range of about 6 to 10% in the future. So with all these petrochemicals growth in India, especially, the question here is whether the refiners can afford to stay in the conventional products which they used to make. The answer is definitely no, unless otherwise the regional economics permit you, or you have to think of the new facilities to be more chemical manufacturers or petrochemicals manufacturers than the conventional fuels. In this regard, the industry is moving on 3 steps, or like in the computer world, you had a first generation, second generation, third. The economists or the the investors are thinking of bringing in three phases. One is the first generation, where it is the current level. For example, some of the refiners have a petrochemical plant like a cracker attached with this, but they are not converting all the chemicals into, all the fuels into chemicals. They hardly do. There is 5% some places, there are 10%, but easily it can go to 20% with the units like FCC more producing more propylene or olefins than to use it only for producing some diesel or something like that. So there is even today the best highly integrated refinery can make about 10 to 15%, but the future is not going to be same. So we have to get to 40 to 50%. In that level only, if you make, then you can have a growth on this industry. So that's likely to come, and it is already coming. And many of the new units in China, they always aim at least at the 40% level or 50% level of the chemicals. And one of the projects which is going to come up on very soon, the Engli, which is being done by Wood Mackenzie, and that refinery as such, most of the fuels will be converted into the petrochemicals products. If what the industry also is thinking, that instead of even having 50% may not be even adequate, so we may have to go to 80 level, and that is what is the majors like Aramco and others are planning to take the refinery from conventional fuel producers to chemical producers. So this is the flow sheet of the refineries are likely to change. It is not going to be this conventional crude unit followed by some of the desulfurizers, some hydrocrackers, and FCC units. It is going to be a lot more sensitive. So when you need all the fuels, all the hydrocarbons to be converted into petrochemical products, you need to invest more on units to make aromatics and also the olefins. So the product slates in the refineries have to go up at a much different than what it is. So how do we do this? Can only the new refineries start with this? My view or the industry view is not that, but unfortunately in India this has not taken up much, as it is very well demonstrated in other places like Thailand, Far East, and other countries. But 30 years ago, I know one of my CEO very much insisted on Manali industry belt, for example. So, but unfortunately, those things have not gone. Sorry about this disruption.
I think you can switch your windows, sir. Yeah.
So I want to remember Mr. V.R. Deenadayalu, who was the chairman of MRL. He wanted to bring in the concept of Manali Industrial Belt, where you share the synergies between the industry.
Sir, don't close the program because it will. Yeah, wait for the program to.
Yeah, more of the this thing is going to come in the industry, and I want the industry to take a lead in making the synergies available and convert the refineries into more of petrochemical complexes than to just be a refineries. Maybe I will have, this is a good time. Maybe I'm talking too much. That is why there is a natural break, and I can give it to my colleague who will talk about mostly about the new processes or the new technologies available for the to improve the refineries' profitability. How about that?
Sure, sir. Thank you very much. We'll wait for Mr. Rajaraman to share his presentation. In the meantime, at ABN, we are very humbled and we are very honored to have eminent speakers today, because of which we also have celebrity management people from the industry who are attending this presentation today. It is our honor to spare some time to welcome them in between our presentations. Gopi, would you like to introduce? Gopi?
Yeah. It's a pleasure to have Mr. Prasad Panikar, former retired executive director of Bharat Petroleum and currently the CEO of Naira, and Mr. Alok Saxena, the managing director of Sulzer Glitch Technology Limited, Delhi. I would request both of them to say a few words before we proceed to the next person. Mr. Punjabi. Panikar sir.
Gopi, you can ask Panikar sir to unmute.
Yeah. You can ask Mr. Prasad Panikar to unmute and talk. And Mr. Alok Saxena.
Thank you very much for this wonderful interaction. It is very, very pleasing that you have done it on a Sunday so that we are all free and also coming up with many new ideas. All the very best, the entire UOP team. I had a conversation with Varda about, if I am correct, about 1 month back. Then he suggested to me that UOP is planning for such an interaction with the industry. It is very nice. All the best, and thank you very much for this interaction and giving more insight to the industry, how to move or how to operate in the new normal situation. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. Thank you for coming, sir. Alok Saxena. Alok, you can unmute and speak, Alok.
Yeah, now it could be. Yeah, thanks. I think it's a timely organization to address current challenges, and in view of the presentation by Vadrajan clearly indicated it's only a temporary phase. Situation will improve, and it's only time which will revert everything back and we will be in good shape. It's really, all such communication at this stage are really relevant and useful for all of us. Thanks for you organized it on Sunday and we could participate effectively in this. Thank you very much for giving this opportunity.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Alok. Mr. Rajaram, would you like to please start off, sir?
Yeah, are you able to see the screen or again I'll share it, I think?
No, I think you need to share now. Okay.
Are you able to see? Let me know.
Yeah, it's coming up. Yeah, it's clear now.
Okay. Good morning, good afternoon to all of you. First of all, I would like to thank the organizers, Mr. Tariq, Mr. Gopi, and Sri Kumar, for giving us this opportunity, not only to participate and present this, and also really overwhelmed by the amount of participation and our chance to interact with my seniors, colleagues, friends in the industry. Let me begin the topic, what I have said, taking from what Mr. Rajan has earlier alluded to, refinery of the future. When we joined, at least when I joined in '83 in MRL in the first few days, there was a lecture and first time they said that you have joined the industry, but we don't know how long the crude will last, maybe 15 years, 20 years. And he said that he was almost like 25 years in the industry. He said, this is what I heard when I joined. So you will also tell the same thing. But it is slightly changed. Never ever there was a doubt about diminishing the product demand for the fuels. And that time it was worried about the crude supply. The situation we are here today is the fuels demands are expected to come down, at least because of the various disruptive technologies by the electric vehicles, or change of the disruptive new mode of transportation like Uber and Ola and all that. But also the changing phenomena on the environmental concerns, and also various new availability of feedstock like gases and other things. It has changed the big shift in the fuel mix or how we handle it. So what is that the refinery can do? So that is what we are planning to discuss today. And as organizers indicated, please share your questions or clarifications or your thoughts. We can discuss it at the end. Now, yeah. So going by the then definitely we think that the future of refining is certain. There is no doubt about it. And I'm just plotting about from 2032 onwards. What I have shown here is a red is the projected petrochemicals demand over and above the each and every years. Now, coming back to the fuels shrinkage, that is in the black. As you can see that we expect a greater shrinkage as we go from year 2032 to 2039. And if you compare it to that the graph of the red, which is the petrochemical growth, you can see that it cannot compensate for the demand or the growth expected in the petrochemicals, which clearly indicates there is an opportunity exists to move towards petrochemicals and also utilize existing shrinkage of fuels if we can convert to a valuable product. So we will see how that can be achieved. Now, this also takes into some of the other global constraints like recycled plastics that is going to shrinkage the petrochemicals demand. But in all, the net there is a big growth is there for the petrochemicals. Now, earlier, Mr. Rajan pointed out the first generation, second generation, third generation capability. So I'm basically touching upon that in a kind of a pictorial form. Previous refineries used to concentrate mainly on transportation fuels. We were quite, happy to handle the large, demand of the fuels in the transportation section, making gasoline, diesel, and jet. And there were, petrochemicals complexes adjacent to the refineries, and the refineries used to supply the petrochemicals, and the petrochemicals was a kind of a separate industry. So as the petrochemicals industry started going in and pressure on margin started coming in, nowadays people talk about refinery and petrochemical complex integration, which is happening in a small extent, not to a greater extent, with change of little bit of I will say that shift towards either the gasoline or the diesel shifting to petrochemicals, with the new complexes coming with the FCC, with the making higher propylene and all that. But if you see that the yesteryear's refinery, they were hardly making any petrochemicals. Now, today, the best integrated petrochemicals units do not have more than 10 or 15% in the petrochemical portfolio than what is needed actually. In the future, we do expect that people will move for almost closer to zero fuels, and it is also going to have a bigger impact or pressures by the environmental thing that is happening. And obviously, people are going to look for higher capital efficiency than that was achieved. So there is these are the changing trend, I would say, from first generation to second generation and to the third generation. Let us see in each of this development how the technology plays a major role and how we can monetize the existing assets and move towards the various stages of the development. Now, the refinery of the future has to be like this. It has to be flexible, especially with respect to shift towards the gasoline and the diesel. There is no way people can say that I am my refinery is towards maximize diesel or maximize gasoline. It has to have the capability to meet the changing product mix and also changing feedstock preparation for the downstream petrochemicals. Integration with the petrochemicals is given. There is no longer, it is an option for the refinery. And as we know, and as we talk about even on a Sunday with more than 143 participants sitting at home connected, that is going to be the future even for the refinery. The refinery will move towards a lot of digitization, advanced technologies, advanced monitoring, remote monitoring, etc. So all these things will be the future. And if you really want to maximize and monetize every hydrocarbon molecules that is coming in. Now, let us take through the existing assets and how one can monetize it. This is a simple refinery generally people have, and there are certain changes to some of these configuration could be there as per the existing refineries. But this is a generic flow diagram where people used to have a bottom of the conversion, mostly a delayed coking unit. There will be a FCC. Some places there will be a hydrocracker, depending on that. I have chosen here to represent the FCC as already in India, we started moving towards making propylene from FCC to meet the all the growing propylene demand. Now, naphtha complexes are there, mostly making now towards the Euro 5 gasoline and other specifications. Now, what is going to happen in future is we can add some of these technologies, what I have showing it now coming up in the screen. I will briefly describe the purposes of it, not in greater detail in view of the time, as well as, to have the entire, audience to be covered. Now, let us see the kerocracking is a low pressure cracking of the kerosene stream, converting it to valuable naphtha for either for the naphtha complex or future petrochemicals purposes, and also to make it more LPG. Similarly, hydrocracking of the diesel is going to come. These two, if you really see that, are aimed towards shrinking the fuel component, either the gasoline or the diesel. Now, the third element, which is going to be the future technology, which is going to be present in almost all, as we envisage today in petrochemical complex, is the olefin cracking process. The olefin cracking process, in brief, is it takes the C5 to C8 olefins from any of the streams, whether it is the cracked gasoline or any other streams of naphtha which contains olefins. It could be even in other places, or even the C4 olefins, and then converting into predominantly propylene and ethylene. Now, I have added the C4 complex with the MTBE and alkylate. The reason that is coming is India's Euro 5 specification. We have adopted almost all the specifications except the octane requirement of 95 for the engine. There has been a lot of discussions between the automobile manufacturers and the refining industry, why the gap is there, and they want to have a standard number of 95. And there are some refineries, they can make around 25-30% of the gasoline with 95 octane. But if everybody has to go, they may need one or other plants like alkylate or MTBE to meet those 95 octane, and also meeting the other specification of the gasoline. Now there is a question on propylene demand. How do we meet? Can FCC alone meet? It is unlikely with the result of various growth demand that is being put in propylene. Maybe we will revisit what Mr. Rajan has shared with the propylene demand, our capability. There has to be an on-purpose propylene make, which is called the dehydro technology of making propane to propylene is going to come. And this is the trend, in fact, what is happening in the neighboring country, China, where more than 10-15 dehydrogenation plant of PDH technology that has come up in China to meet the propylene demand. And that is going to catch up in India sooner or later. Of course, as the move towards the petrochemical demand, the two building blocks of olefins and aromatics is a must, and aromatics complex are going to come. And steam cracker is expected to come to build the narrow gap between the ethylene and the propylene, and also give the flexibility to the refiners or the petrochemical complex to vary the ratio of ethylene and propylene and make it. If you see all these things, this is the likely to be the utilizing the existing assets and then moving towards the petrochemicals. Still, it is not completely eliminating the fuels, but we can move towards that. If you just take care of or just imagine the petro or the our India map, where the petrochemicals, the hubs or the structures are there. As far as the aromatics complex is concerned, majority is on the western side. We have something on the Panipat. And later it was, started at Mangalore. And now we are talking about a new complex at Paradeep. It is all concentrated only in 4 of these places. And it is unfortunately that we in Tamil Nadu missed the opportunity to build the aromatics complex a long time back. But even the other petrochemicals are concentrated only either in the Gujarat or those regions, Panipat, and little bit coming up in the Mangalore. Now Kerala has, Kochi has taken up a big leap in building up a petrochemical complex. But if you see the other, eastern coast, still there is a gap. Now people are talking about a major refinery expansion by CPCL at the Cauvery Basin. Hopefully, we overcome various hurdles with the environmental and other clearances, and we start quickly to fill so that the India as a kind of a map all over the places, we should be able to get this kind of a, new petrochemicals complexes coming in. Now let me go up to, this is what the moving from the only pure fuels. This has helped creating some high margins, and we can implement all these things in a kind of a phased projects, and so that the capital efficiency can be achieved by putting it to small addition of this, either the OCP technology or using the small kerocracking to maximize the naphtha or LPG or the diesel or getting the jets. And of course, the PDH and the steam cracking has got a larger investment compared to the others. Now let us go to the integrated complexes that is coming in. If you see here, now we talk about the same complexes, but with, there are some bottom of the barrel upgradations is expected to come, either the Uniflex or some of the, other technologies that helps in maximizing the conversion of the bottom of the barrel, because now the heavy crude to light crude, the differentials has come down, but there could be in future, there could be incentive to process the heavy crude, but with the crude demand also going to narrow down with the other utilization of the fuels generations or the petrochemicals generation, the bottom of the barrel also conversions one has to evaluate. But these are the things that is likely to add as a kind of a total complex, converting everything to the naphtha or suitable for going to a cracker complex. Now, there is an additional technology that is available in aromatics complex, which is essentially what is called toluene methylation, converting further toluene to PX and further maximizing the PX production. So the entire complex, if you see the same thing that has, coming up in the previous slides, and to this is maximizing the olefins and the aromatics. Now, this is what is going to be the fuels totally elimination in future, as you see, and each and every complex is being molecules has been converted to maximize the petrochemical feedstock or the building blocks. I will just take to the topmost portion of the naphtha, where the Maxine unit that has been put. The Maxine unit is essentially a separation of the naphtha with respect to its hydrocarbon nature. Paraffins are basically separated, and the preferential paraffins, which are all a very good component for steam cracker to crack, it preferentially sends that to the steam cracker to maximize the yield of ethylene and propylene. Same way, Maxine rejects, which is the concentration of the aromatics, will be a very good feedstock for the platforming unit, and which can go for aromatics generation in a downstream aromatics complexes. And whatever be the gas plant, which is a saturation gas plant, a combined one, separates the C3C4s, they can go to a on-purpose propylene unit, which is called the propylene dehydrogenation units, to maximize the PDH. Similarly, you can see that conversion of the middle distillates, either the kerosene or the diesel, will be converted through the hydrocracker unit, one it to the naphtha and the LPG, which can further go for processing in the above units. And of course, the bottom of the barrel conversion with the slurry hydrocrackers going to FCC, and then converting partly to the propylene and also to the aromatics extraction unit, and also with respect to olefin cracking, which can also go into the maximize the petrochemical feedstock. And of course, we have the detergent, which Rajan was alluded to, where we can still make the LAB from that kerosene feedstock. So in all, if you really look at it, this is a technology. What that is indicated here are all not new technologies. The applications has been slightly different. The way it is being configured is different. And accordingly, you can vary the olefins to aromatics generation from each of the complex and move towards complete elimination of the fuels. So if you say that from the beginning, where we have a concern of diminishing the fuels, how do we utilize the existing crude capability and then move towards more valuable products or the gain in the industry? These are the various building blocks. One can definitely go through it and achieve this and completely eliminate the fuels. This is not a project that is on paper. Already China, some couple of projects are already doing the Schedule A, or basically the basic engineering, to evaluate and ascertain the capital cost. Now we talked about the various elements of the technology and how this technology is also going to be made in a kind of a sustainable act or balancing act. If you really see that this diagram, if you move from the climatic concern on the right hand side, we are already seeing the fuels efficiency is needed because of the electric vehicles and other things, which is already started coming in. The pressures on fuels, the renewables has started coming in, replacing some of the fossil fuels. And as expected, because of the other technologies are like we talked about common pooling of Uber and Ola, there is a lower fuels growth is expected, and which is going to have a pressure on the fuels growth. If you come and turn towards the anti-clockwise, everybody expects the GDP to increase, and that is what is expected to grow up. And with that, obviously the standard of living is going to go up, and use of various our petrochemicals or the plastic usage, as we see, is going to grow up. Then there is a rising demand for petrochemicals is going to result, which makes us to think that the petrochemicals demand is going to push, and we take the shrinkage of the fuels as we discussed in our first slide, and utilization of that, and to capture the value by moving to the petrochemicals. Now, this is the third and ultimate generation that is being planned with all the elements of petrochemicals downstream. As you can see, LLDB, polypropylene, butadiene, PX and benzene, and all kinds of the complex situations has been added here. This is final configuration that is being worked out with the customers. it is on the drawing table, and hopefully, this is what some or other companies will start moving in the next coming years as we go. And some of the units we touched about, which can be added even today, is being, I'm highlighting it, which are all going to be evergreen even in going forward as a kind of a future. So when somebody is moving towards from, let us say, we are moving to second generation to third generation, still we could utilize some of these, technologies, and nothing will go as a kind of a redundant or otherwise. Only thing is we can phase out our investment. Now I'm just slightly shifting gears because this is also a very, very important aspect, how the future technology has to be adopted, and what we call it as a 6 efficiency matrix for all the business to go. Earlier, we were selecting the technologies on different parameters, depending upon some are with respect to energy efficiency, some with respect to pollution control, some with respect to capital efficiency, some with respect to usage of hydrogen or production of hydrogen. Now, the future of all these technologies, adoption or alignment for business has to follow all these things. Every molecules of hydrocarbon has to be properly utilized, and then they have to be routed with the maximum possible way to utilize it. And obviously, utilization of the utilities is going to be evaluated in, with respect to all the other parameters that has been indicated here. Water usage is going to be a concern as we go, both from the generation of effluent water as well as availability of the fresh water. And obviously, I don't have to talk about the CO2 emission, which is going to have a big pressure, and the hydrogen economy, which is going to be, it is both on the usages as well as generation from the utilization of the hydrocarbon. We have to take it. And obviously, everything comes up with the capital efficiency, and the project has to be bankable, and we should be able to, capital efficiency is very, very critical in nowadays. Now, so the UOP is what we suggest as a kind of, E6 benchmarks. Essentially, we do nowadays adopt this kind of a E6 adoption of efficiencies, and so that we are aligned with the future concerns of business alignment. This is, I'm just bringing back the slide Mr. Rajan has projected. I'm just going to bring out a different aspect of it. Okay, we talked about going through petrochemicals. What does it really, give me an opportunity for India, or as a kind of a people who are working in different industries or entrepreneurs? Where do I look at it, or where are the opportunities? As you can see that some of the thing I have indicated in a purple is a growth that is going to be deficient or still going to be imported. And as we discussed earlier, the 7% growth on resin and 9% growth on resin and 7% growth on filament are a phenomenal growth. I mean, with the present buildup of hardly 2% buildup of other PX and others, is never going to satisfy this demand. So there is an opportunity to invest in, or somebody to think about on these downstreams. Then the next one I'm talking about, this is on the aromatics, and I'll take the major two, building blocks on the olefins, ethylene and propylene. I just take you to the right-hand side of my presentation, where the purple, as you can see, that import of EDC 36%, VCM 38%, PVC 53%, and the growth is 7%. You can see polypropylene continues to go, and you can see the import still going to be around 15%. And if you see on the propylene derivatives, propylene oxide, acrylonitrile, acrylic acid, we are all not there. I mean, yes, Cochin is made to make some kind of effort in this, but there is a tremendous opportunity. Maybe the scale may be less, but with the current situation growing in the chemical industry, we think that downstream, especially niche petrochemicals, will have a major role to play, and there will be a demand. with that, I would like to conclude that it is not, yes, we have a lot of challenges in the refining industry with the, shrinkage of demand and the change of policies and the environmental concerns. But as always, the industry has been resilient and moved towards and taking the challenges and moving towards petrochemicals. We will become the standard of future. And definitely some of the concepts, the E6 efficiencies and molecule management are already being thought about it. And the existing assets could be monetized. It is not that they can be wasted, and we can do a kind of what we call that stage-wise investment or step-wise investment we can play. And all these technologies, innovations are already taking place, and they are all not nothing new. The adoption has been the different. I think with that, I have come to the end of my conclusion of the discussions on the technology adoption. And I once again thank all of you for the passionate listening, and also the organizers for giving this opportunity to share. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Mr. Rajaraman. It was very insightful and mesmerizing, the way the industry is going to go and the kind of new technology, innovation, adoption that is going to happen. And with this, we now invite Mr. Baliga to share his insight in terms of how we go forward in managing the refineries and the units more efficiently. And over to Mr. Baliga.
Yeah, rather good morning or good afternoon, just at the noon now. And thank you very much to the organizers, Gopi, Tariq, and others, Sri Kumar, yes, Vishwanath. Thank you very much for putting me in here. And I'm also thankful to all the people who have taken time to listen to me. Actually, I am going to completely change the environment here in the conference, where Varda and Raja have been trying to make you into a businessman, and futuristic scenario they have been taking you, how it's going to be pan out, and so that you can set your agenda for the next 3-4 years how it is. But I am just going to bring you back to today, to the field where actually the bang for the buck is here. So actually how we run the plant efficiently, safely, reliably, that's all actually at the end of the day matters. And as engineers, we are passionate about plants and equipment, processes, raw material products, safety, economics, energy, all these things. So I am going to talk about it a bit. Let me share my presentation. So Tariq, is it visible, my screen?
Yes, sir. You can make it full screen. Yeah.
Yeah. So the topic is going to be safe, reliable, and compliant operations in hydrocarbon and other toxic chemical process plants. So actually, yeah, is it moving on? Is the slides moving? I come to the content slide.
Yeah, not it, sir. It's still on the view mode. We can change it to the shall I?
No, let me make one try, otherwise I'll give it over to you.
Sure.
Is it okay now?
Yeah, if you can kindly make it the full screen mode. The next, yeah. Perfect.
Yeah,
sir.
yeah, okay. So we are going to talk about just overview. You already got a full dose of the process plants in India, the economics and the scenarios and its contribution to India's economy, etc. We are going to focus more on the item 2 to 6, various hazards in process plants, various issues related to process safety management. We are going to see some incidents, deadly incidents from the past, and then elements of safe and reliable operations. And then how do we know we do that? So Varda and Raja touched upon it. In India today, I believe 30% of the GDP comes from manufacturing. The balance comes from agriculture and service sectors, etc. Out of the 30%, one quarter is coming from process industries. Out of the manufacturing, various other mechanical, electrical, manufacturing areas, civil. If you go into that, 25% comes from process industry. As chemical engineers, or rather for that matter, any engineer, we have a lot of responsibility to maintain it, the assets very, very safely, operate it safely and reliably, so that they give the return on investment in a more responsible and a reliable manner. So we know that earlier India used to have very small industries. Slowly and slowly in the last 2 decades, a lot of large scale, global scale, world scale plants are coming up. So with the result, the responsibilities to operate those plants safely and reliably is also increasing. In the sense, if there is a small plant, the inventories of the toxic chemicals and hazardous chemicals are less. And then the nature of impacts, undesirable impacts it has on safety and reliability were that much limited. Population also, earlier it was not that much, but it has grown up phenomenally. And then there are a lot of communities are living around large plants. So actually, it's very important that we have a mindset for operating the plant safely and reliably. When you talk about hazards in the process plants, basically there are two types of hazards we talk about. I am going to give a lot of emphasis here on the safety, although there is also a relevant emphasis on the environment, which is actually embedded or subsumed into the soft process safety aspect. So I talk about two safety aspects here. One is the workplace safety, another is the process safety. So workplace safety actually deals with several types of injuries, and it is by and large confined to the local plant people. And then the external community or outsiders generally don't come to know about it. There may be day in and out, there could be some workplace safety or personal safety, they call it. And then most of the outsiders don't know. Only the people who are inside the plant know about it, and it is treated, unless it's very serious in nature. Whereas process safety incident, if it happens, you cannot hide it. And it is actually going to be knowing, even actually some of the times the owners come to know an incident happened in his plant from TV these days, and not from his own people, because these people are so much get engaged in incident management at that time that they won't be able to escalate and inform the relevant people. So process safety are actually deadly. Workplace safety actually has got simple impacts, as I said, is usually first aid case, plenty are there. Medical treatment cases, lost work cases, permanently disabling injuries. As the severity increases, you have certain things like occupational injuries, which are permanently, people don't know they are injured, but over a period of time, they come to know they have been getting injured for several years. And of course, fatalities. They are all like slip and fall from height, forklift incidents and crane toppling, EOT crane rope sling getting cut and falling, burns due to exposure to electrical flashovers, and fires and steam, hot surfaces. They are all, and people transport. There are a lot of people transport incidents in the industry. We call them all actually workplace safety. 80% of the workplace safety incidents happen due to unsafe acts. So if you look at unsafe act, is actually an act which is done by an operator or a person which is not as per the standard procedure. We assume that procedure is properly developed, which takes into consideration all the hazards and risks involved, and then it is covered up in the process to take required mitigation measures and checkpoints, so that if the procedure is followed, there's nothing going to go wrong. So most of the unsafe acts comes from there, and then 80% of the injuries are coming from there. So workplace safety is usually covered with various regulations and habits. And PPS is one of the most important thing, personal protective equipments like helmet, goggles, gloves, and safety shoes, and then inherently fire retardant suits, etc., etc. And in boilers and all that electrical area, you have special PPS. And proper planning. PPE is a standard thing. It is actually visible about how you care about the workplace safety. Is visible, and then you can immediately make a judgment whether people are working safe or not by looking at the way they handle PPEs and they use the PPC. Job planning is one which is not visible, but it requires to be seen. Only people in the plant know it. A very good job planning will reduce the workplace safety enormously. Operating procedures, use of proper tools, and unsafe acts I already talked about. So along with the preparing job operating procedures and job planning, you also do a proper risk assessment. If you don't do it, your job planning and operation procedures are expected to be not good enough. Job safety analysis and such kind of things are done, and then you identify what are the control measures you want to put in place, and you do that. Above all, there's an operating discipline. Operating discipline is a very, very important thing for having a very, very safe workplace. Operating discipline is actually bypassing a procedure, doing unsafe acts, are all operation discipline issues, not wearing PPEs, etc. Operator competency is another area. Lack of competency. What is competency? We'll see it in a couple of slides later. But competency generally is very important to be. A competent operator will never land into an accident. He will see that coming, so he takes care of it and then avoids such things happening. And then ultimately a protocol where everything is controlled through a proper organizational approval process, permit to work. So these are the most important steps involved in workplace safety management. When you come to process safety, is actually a serious damage that happens. And actually it's a damage to plant, equipment, environment, injuries to very serious injuries to people, including fatalities can happen. And most of the time, it also overspills beyond the boundaries of your plant, your neighboring community. If you look at Bhopal and Vizag that happened recently, I'll come to that later, but you will find that their own people were not affected. Within Bhopal Union Carbide inside or the Vizag LG complex inside, hardly anybody got injured, and it was never a news. What was in the news was people who got injured outside, who were innocent people, who were all get affected very badly, and they are actually there's a tremendous consequence. Their families and their future is affected. These are all process safety incident is that which is very, very serious, and then it is coming from the inherent processes rather than people behavior. Release of toxic chemicals, we talked about it. This process safety is usually loss of primary containments, fire explosion, even environment incidents, release of H2S and other toxic material like what happened in Bhopal, etc. They are all process safety incidents. So they are very infrequent, but they are deadly. We'll quickly go through a few deadly incidents just to remind us what is the what we mean by process safety. All these incidents, what I am showing you now, they are all very good examples. There are actually plenty, but I thought what is important, I brought it here. One is actually the Piper Alpha. No refinery or petrochemical plant engineers will be there, I guess, who don't know what went wrong in Piper Alpha. In Piper Alpha is an offshore platform, I think owned by Occidental Chemicals, and it was in the North Sea of UK, in which something went wrong and almost 167 people, almost all, 99% of the people died. I think hardly about 3 or 4 people were survived. Everybody in the platform who were working and who were there on the 15-day vacation, the shift rotation people who were living in their quarters, they also died. So the entire platform got gutted. Nearly $3.5 billion in $88 terms equivalent was the loss to the company. Nearly 10% of the oil production was cut in UK's production was got cut. So what went wrong here basically is very simple. There are various things went wrong, but actually they were all cumulative. What happened is actually the culture was there. The culture has got eroded, I would say, in my analysis, and that is what is the thing. You can't pinpoint that particular day this fellow did this because of which this happened. You can't say that. I think it happened because over a period of time, the leadership was not focusing on safety, environment, and rigor that is required to run the platform very, very safely. They slowly and slowly started thinking that everything is safe and boys are there, they will take care. That kind of an attitude actually was the most important thing. Actually, what happened was in the day shift, the people were running the plant and a pump was kept off for maintenance, and then its PSB was dropped and it was blinded, but not blinded with the proper system. It was actually kept loose, thinking that nobody will start the pump. And then shift was handed over. During handover of the shift, it was not intimated to the next night shift people that this pump is not available, do not start the pump, and it was not written in logbook. So actually, the operating discipline was not there, process safety management considerations were not there, and O&M practices and management was bad. The result in the night, when the running pump tripped, the so-called condensate pump tripped, the night shift people just thought that they can start the B pump, and then they started the second pump, and then a lot of gas and condensate gushed out, and then it found a source of ignition, and then the whole thing went off. So look at the Boonsfield oil incident. This also happened in UK. Is a tank farm which has about 40-45 tanks, and then receives oil and gasoline and diesel from two different refineries, standalone refineries, and then it stores oil and diesel and gasoline here, and then fills the ships that comes on the shore. Here also, I would say the operating discipline and culture, which is actually leadership role, has got eroded, and things day-to-day rigor in safe and reliable operations were lost. Operating practices and management, process safety focus were lost. Risk assessment and management was lost. What happened is here, it is known in the same way, in the day shift people handed over the shift to night shift people, and they said gasoline is getting filled in such and such tank, and please take care of it, its level gauge is not working. And they said, because based on our assessment, the tank will get filled up by night 12 o'clock, so you better stop filling at 11 and then give change over to the tank. Night shift people re-estimated, and then they said 12 o'clock it will get filled. But there was a slight element of doubt in their minds, which refinery is filling gasoline in through which line into which tank. So they had some doubts and they were not sure. So they were not verifying things properly. With the result, actually tanks started overflowing at night 10 o'clock. They never knew. Around 11:30, when they wanted to switch over the tank, when they went to the field and saw, they found the tank is already overflowing and there was a huge vapor cloud. And then it found a source of ignition, and then the whole tank farm went off. Nearly 43 people got injured because they could run away before this happened, but the entire tank farm went away and the company went out of business. BP Texas Refinery in 2005, a similar case of culture, operating discipline and operating practices and its rigor and strict compliance to it. And from top to bottom, I would say, from the top management to the bottommost operator, there was a complete lack of casualness in the running. Actually, this refinery, this particular incident happened during a startup. We all know startup is more vulnerable to safety and disasters or abnormal situations. It's a transient state, so nobody can have a very good control on pressures and temperatures. In fact, actually that is being moved by the panel operator. Flows are being changed, temperatures are being changed, the flows are being pushed. So actually there is a transient state everywhere, and then it requires a tremendous amount of control and discipline in starting a plant in a better way. In this particular case, the shift, night shift, actually they started the plant in the night shift. It's one of the best practice says, don't start a refinery after a big shutdown during night 7 o'clock, 8 o'clock time. You better wait and start at morning 8 o'clock. Once the new fresh shift has come, have a proper look around and then start. That is one of the best practices. You may lose 8 hours of production and so many few dollars, but it's always safe. But there was a hurry to start production and then make those few gallons of diesel earlier. So that's how it happened. And then they started the refinery, the isomer unit, and then night 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock, suddenly the shift engineer got a call from home. So he asked his people, you keep going up on throughput, keep going up on heating. And then he went away, leaving the plant, start up to the boys and went. And the next shift man came morning 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock, not at 7 o'clock. 7 o'clock was the shift changeover. He came around 9 o'clock. By the time shift changeover has already happened, and the new shift man came and he took over the shift on his own. There's nobody to hand him over shift. So these are all extremely unheard of kind of habits, which is actually a very, very clear case of recipe for disasters. Actually, in this case also, there are several things went wrong. One of the most important thing is the isomer blowdown column level transmitter didn't work. They didn't know what is the level. But a good practice says if you don't know the level, you stop. You just stay put. Don't increase throughput, don't increase temperatures, just hold on and see what's happening. But they took their own risks, and then they said, you keep doing it, let me take care of this kind of a attitude. And then they keep going up. Eventually what happened is the blowdown vessel got filled up, and it had an atmospheric open flare or open vent through which hot boiling isomer raffinate kind of a stuff, which is highly deadly thing, overflowed. And then there's a geyser. They say it's a geyser. And then there were nearly about on top of that, there were about 150 or 200 laborers in the plant. Usually you don't start a plant with unknown people. You run with the 10 people or 8 people who are there, who know the plant operation. Even maintenance people are asked to stay out, only called in when they want something to be done. Otherwise, only operation staff are supposed to be there. Whereas these people started the plant with about 120 laborers and contract people in the plant, and then there was a big disaster. Bhopal 84, I don't have to explain what went wrong. It is one of the deadliest of incidents. I think today it ranks as number 1. One of the impact is company itself is disappeared today. And then here again, actually, there are various process safety elements missed, O&M practices missed, community awareness and emergency planning missed, and how can a plant can be running without a destruction unit not in service for several months? That means leadership has been actually sleeping or actually has been lethargic. Ukraine, Chernobyl 1986. This is another case where a proper job planning is not done, and then people hurry up in order to liquidate an action point. At any point, I need to close out an action point resigning on me, rest I will be questioned, kind of an attitude. There was a test of a power interruption on the reactors. So they already done a couple of tests which failed, and this test was more severe. The final test they called it, and then they went it through a power failure mode through various procedural. They did through a procedure, but their risk assessment was not adequate, and their technology systems were not good enough. With the result, when the power outage they created, the reactor didn't have the utility systems didn't have the adequate capacity to cool down the reactor. And then there was a very serious, one of the worst disasters other than Fukushima. I'm coming to Fukushima here, which is actually one of the worst process safety incidents here, where actually the facility design, the locational design, and the emergency scenarios consideration hazards have not seen various scenarios, likely scenarios. What if analysis is not been done properly? With the result, there has been an incident, and then they had a enormous 3 types of problems in the next 4 to 6 or 1 year period. How to deal with the radiation fallout, how to deal with the contaminated material disposal, and above all, the sea which got contaminated with the cooling material, and then how to protect the marine things like that. Of course, the entire city was evacuated, and now today it's a ghost city kind of a thing. Vaisak steering is a very recent phenomenon. It is a mini Bhopal. Here again is various incidents like process safety management, risk assessment. I would also add here competency is one of the issue here, because competency today actually nobody know in that plant. For that matter, the whole of India, I would say, or even outside India today, most of the people didn't know how deadly styrene is vis-a-vis toxicity. People were always look at styrene as is a fire and explosion hazard. It has never been seen as a toxic hazard like this before this. But when you went into the MSDS material selection data sheet of styrene of any company today, you will find they say it is a highly toxic material. So what it says is, even those who are producing styrene were knowing that it is a highly toxic material, but it is not there in their RAM memory in their brain that it is toxic. Everybody, manufacturers, suppliers, traders, handlers, nobody knew it is such a toxic material. No wonder that in this plant in Vizag, no one knew it was so toxic. and then they landed up in such a big thing. So competency is an important element in this particular thing, I would say. Mokondo is another one of the number one disaster from the environment point of view, where more than 200 million gallons of oil got spilled, and the company lost something like 65 billion in terms of net worth and actual cash out because of cleanup costs and actually only a company like BP could withstand such a disaster. Any other company other than BP would have definitely gone out of business. They say even another mini Mokondo happens, BP also will get wiped out, because the environmentalists and governments are so hockey today that nobody can afford to have something like this. Here again, there's somebody bypassed a basic requirement before startup. The blowout preventer was not tested, and then it was installed as such because they didn't want to wait a couple of days for testing. So it's all a question of additional barrels of oil or gas, which actually pushes people to hurry up. So time pressures and production pressures actually overwhelm their safety consideration. So this is all very, very serious things. So risk management, we see when you talk about process safety management, we talked about risk management, risk assessment and management, even when we talked about workplace safety incidents, but their consequences are very limited and small in nature. Maybe somebody gets injured. I'm not saying it is allowed. It is not tolerable, obviously. It's not a single injury. Even a cut is not tolerable in a factory. We don't allow it at all. But process safety is a complete no-go. And you have to have a stringent risk management program, a process, a protocol system in place. In fact, any large company must have a risk manager, a full-fledged risk manager who is competent in risk management processes. Usually, if you go to the world in the knowledgeable industry in the world and talk about risk management, they all talk about financial risks, frauds, and thefts and all that. But we are talking here about the specialized risk management of safety and reliability and hazardous chemical handling risk, safety and operational risks. You must have a specialist in your company. If you are not a big company, you better join hands together and have a consortium of industries and appoint a consultant and have your factories assessed for various process risks. And the various risk assessment methodologies are available. People talk about calculated risk. Risk cannot be calculated nor can be estimated. What you can do is assessment, and with various technology tools available today, modeling and other things, there are some kind of quantitative and qualitative risk assessments. So quantitativeness is a little bit possible, but that must be done. And everybody should do a risk assessment, especially if you are handling a very, very high hazardous chemical, toxic chemical, and if your inventories are very high. So you go through this risk assessment is basically a sort of a cause leading to a hazard happening, and then the hazard leading to having a consequence. You identify what are the tasks that you have, identify what are the hazards involved in the tasks, and assess the risk. What is the probability of a hazard happening or the cause happening? What is the consequence of that? And based on that, you identify if the probability is high and the consequence is high, you have a high risk. If it's a medium, you have a medium risk or a low risk. And once you have identified all your, let's say in your plant, you have 10,000 activities, out of which, let's say 8,000 activities are performed every day. And let's say another 1,500 are done once in a week, and another 500 are done once in a quarter or a year. You identify them into these risk matrix. Which are these 10,000 are high risk, which are medium risk, which are low risk. You will find a majority of your jobs are low risks, and then you can have protocols. Low risk jobs. Let my competent operator do it. I'll give him a procedure, I'll make him competent and let him do the job. Medium risk, I'll have a protocol. I'll say that whenever the job happens, it will be done under supervision. I'll put the supervisor to be present at the job site so that it is taken care. When high risk, I may have additional measures, like whatever I can put additional measures and handle it. I can have a control, like I won't have more than one high risk per day job. I won't have more than 10 medium risk jobs per day, kind of a protocols you can have, and that way you can take care of the risk. So if you don't do such kind of a strategic approach towards risks and process safety events, it is going to be difficult to manage. So what are the various elements of safe and reliable operation? There are multiple. Let me quickly go through that. What is design and construction? I want to go through all the bullets here. I hopefully the organizers will let you have this presentation. I will only talk a few here. Design and construction is very, very important. Plants are designed meeting to the contemporary codes and standards, and then it is built as per the specification. And then there is a design basis. The design basis actually considers the end-to-end life cycle of the plant, and then plant is built as per that. When you do the design basis, actually you have to consider the entire life cycle, as I said, and then you look at how it impacts the operations, constructions, raw material supply movement, water flows, effluent streams, communities. Look at shutdown point of scenarios and temporary shutdowns like COVID. What happens, how that, and then when you restart after COVID, kind of temporary shutdowns, whether your design basis provides for those. Second one is documentation. A very, very important thing about this. Even large companies, we have found there is some kind of a gap in this measure. Like, for example, how up to date is your plot plans, process flow diagrams, P&IDs, data sheets, vendor manuals. They all must be up to date. No plant is remaining idle from the day one to the day end. There are a lot of changes happening in the plant. Modifications are done, debottleneckings are done. You need to continuously update your P&IDs and keep them up to date. One is design document, another is own documents. Your SOPs, operating limits, operating manuals, training modules, etc. They have to be up to date, and they should be actually fit for purpose. Then you need to have policies and standards, procedures and practices. Everything you need to document, and it should be there. It's not enough if you have a policy for the sake of ISO 9000. You should have a policy. Of course, ISO 9000 is one of the best standards, but you need to have a policy that is understood and practiced. And it is the elements of the policies are embedded in your procedures and practices and checklists. Data, reports and records, not the last but not the least. They are very important, especially in the today's world of digitization and the data and analytics, etc. Your data is very important. How well you maintain your data, what is the sort of your data structure, you need to look at it and see that they are all preserved, maintained well. Coming to training and competency, competency is basically a demonstration of whether a person is able to do the job rightly as required. This is competency. Competency is not training. Suppose I've taken all my 10 operators and given them training, I don't call him competent. You have given him awareness. And if the person has completed the procedures and he is able to walk through the procedure completely, I won't say he is competent. I would say he is knowledgeable. When he is actually having the knowledge, when he has got the required skill and ultimately he has got the attitudes, then we say he is actually competent. Actually, competency is a combination of all these things. A slide here shows on the blue scale, actually our young people are very, very brilliant. Within no time, they gain the knowledge. The blue graph that you show on the bottom side is the years in job. On the vertical scale is a knowledge, skill, and awareness, relative strength. All the three of which is required to call a person competent. The blue graph says how quickly a person gains knowledge, and then immediately people know because of the knowledge, you tend to wrongly assess a person to be competent. So a knowledgeable person is good. But we say he needs to develop the skill, which comes gradually. Skill actually gets developed gradually based on number of times a person gets an opportunity to do the job. If he doesn't get a opportunity to do the job, how does he get, sharpen his skill? He's only knowledge tiger. So certain jobs which are done only during shutdown, a person gets to develop that skill only during the shutdown, which comes in once in 2 years, 4 years kind of a thing. So actually, until that skill is developed, you can't say he is competent. So actually, it's very wrong to say an operator is competent within 2 years just because he had an excellent knowledge and day-to-day basis, steady-state operation, he is good. And finally, the attitude part of it. The attitude part of it is what comes after a long time. It doesn't immediately come. The attitude is actually the behaviors, the ability to say exactly what is right and what is wrong, and then ability to tell his bosses and others that what we do is wrong and what is the right thing to be done and how it is to be done. That comes after seeing 2-3 shutdowns and 2-3 startups and running the plants for several years, and he becomes really senior enough. Then he starts seeing, he makes his own analysis, his own mental model is matured, and that is the time we say a person is competent. That kind of a thing has to happen. Until then, we can't say competency. And so competency plays a very big role in our safe operations, actually. Now, coming to learning from incidents. Actually, incident investigation is basically a learning exercise. You learn from incident. So investigation is not is done for fixing the person or fixing the equipment. It is to learn from the mistake and see that it never happens again. But we have found, at least our experience, in my experience, I have found, however rigorous your root cause analysis that you do, you end up with repeated incidents. So where have I learned lessons? I have not learned lessons. I have not learned from incidents. Why my pumps are repeatedly changing? Why I repeatedly have breaker flashovers? Why I repeatedly have seal leaks? Why I repeatedly have heater backfires? Why repeatedly I have a person getting injured by touching the hot surface without gloves? And so many things you can see. You will find each of these incidents you would have done a root cause analysis. Every time there is a failure happens or an incident happens on the graph on the right, you see a failure 1, failure 2, failure 3, and then you do a root cause analysis and find out cause 1, cause 2, cause 3, and then you go and give recommendations to kill the cause, say recommendation 1, 2, 3, etc., etc. And that's where our root cause analysis ends. So people start doing investigations and give recommendation. Even if you go into Mokondai incident or you go into a BP Texas refinery, you will find the root cause analysis stop there, giving recommendation. The investigation committee, they find it very easy to give recommendation. It's very easy to tell others what you have not done or what you should do. But doing it is difficult. For example, in this chart, you will find if you want to avoid failure 1, it is not enough if you solve Reco 1. You need to actually kill recommendation 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 up to 9. All the 9 recommendations have to be liquidated in a sustainable manner, assuming the root cause analysis has been good and the recommendations are very appropriate and correct and are very apt. Then when you kill all the recommendations, you can say failure 1 type of failure will never happen in future. But the killing 9 recommendations, mind you, it will take about 2-3 years, depending upon the nature of recommendations. So that means failure 1 is going to repeat for next 2-3 years. And by the time various new elements come, and every time the failure happens, new causes and recos come, and then it's never-ending process. Your failures keep happening. So root cause analysis is an important tool for killing and learning, but it is not ending. One of the things that we discovered in our company is that you do the conventional root cause analysis and kill the recommendations, but you do something called manifestation analysis. You will find that there is something manifesting from the top. There is something coming from the top, which actually, if you fix it, recommendation 1, recommendation 3, recommendation 7, 13, 14, and so on and so forth are actually irrelevant. You take care of the pennies, the pounds take care of themselves, or some kind of a proverb is that. So here it's the reverse. Take care of the pound, the pennies take care of itself. The manifestation, you find out what is that lacking in your organization culture. What can I do at the top? What are the manifestation 1, 2, 3, 4 I do, and all 27 recommendations are useless. Of course, there may be certain things which are very specific to the equipment, the seal design, there was an error, so you need to fix. But if repeatedly seal designs are found to be difficult, errors everywhere, then you need to see what is your procurement process or a selection process. Where is it going wrong in my process or design basis? So that's what is the manifestation. Operation and maintenance is another area where it's important. It's highly relevant, and actually safety lies here. Actually, whether you call workplace safety or a process safety, it lies here. And how rigorous and good your operation maintenance is, then how that good your plant is. Basically, you need to have good SOPs, very good SOCs or limits, very good instructions. These 3 are very important to be given to the plant people, and you have the competent people there, and your plant is safe. So there are 4 formulas. One is have a competent operator, give him SOP, give him SOC, give him daily instructions. Don't allow him to operate his own way. Give him instruction in return. You do it, then actually you will have a safer operation and maintenance. One of the telltale evidence that your plant is in good shape, it is in good hands, and it is really being operated well is housekeeping. If your housekeeping is good, when I walk in your plant, I see a very good plant, a well-painted plant, well-illuminated plant, all the equipments are well tagged, and equipment numbers and names are well painted and legible. Floor is clean, there's no water pool, there's no algae, your stormwater channel is clean and dry, you have a windsock which is actually not stuck up and it's really clean, and so on and so forth. Even temporary equipment, portable hoses, portable equipment, hoses, tools, everything in the right place, ready to use. It's not a hose which was used, removed and thrown away, but it is flushed, dried, and then rolled up and kept in the exact place. Hose number 33 available at hose reel number 4. So then I'll say it's an excellent housekeeping, and then it's a housekeeping tells me you will not have workplace safety incident, or you may not have a process safety incident, most likely, because it's a well taken care plant. Change management is another important thing. Various technical changes, personal changes, subtle changes, temporary changes, emergency changes. Actually, technical changes, traditionally industries have given a lot of emphasis, and they have taken care of well through various MOC processes and protocols and systems, well controlled, I would say. But there is a tremendous amount of gaps, and a lot of improvements are required from top to bottom in industry today with respect to personal change, subtle change, temporary changes. Actually, temporary changes, when it gets too much in number, you start losing things in control. So please do not have more than a couple of temporary changes in a whole refinery at any given time. Emergency changes, it shows how unwell prepared you are. So emergency changes, if you have, that means you are not having a proper management or leadership. Today, these days, people are talking about business transformation, digital transformation, and various, Raja talked about integrating refinery with petrochemical and all that. They are all major changes coming up. Nobody is going to demolish their refinery and build a 3rd generation refinery. They are going to gradually change over from today's 1st generation refinery to slowly and slowly inch over a period of 10 years into a 3rd generation. By the time Raja will come with the 4th generation ideas. So change, managing complex change is a continuous process, and then operation people and the site people have to be extremely alert on this. This particular slide, I took it from one of my contacts from LinkedIn, which I liked it very much. I thought I'd share with you. Any managing change requires 5 elements. There's a vision, there's the skills, there's the incentive, there's the resources, and an action plan. When all the 5 are there, the change happens. When the vision is not there, only confusion remains. The skill is not there, only anxiety remains, and so on and so forth. See, you don't have incentives, there's a resistance. When there's no resources, there's a frustration. Ultimately, if you don't have an action plan, then you have a false start. Contractor management is very important. Contractor safety. Contractors play a big role in our company's operations and maintenance, even services. Here I say contractor is actually supplier. I would put a bigger domain. So we don't select contractors based on their experience at track record, but we verify it and then do it. And we see what is the contractor's personal HR policies and compliance. A contractor may be extremely competent and he may have done great stuff. But if you look at his HR policies and compliances of the policies, and if you find there are some gaps and very big holes, you better be careful with the contractor, because most likely his past record may not be reproducible in your company. So that's very important. And when you say contractor, it is not just contractor, but we talk about a subcontractor. How contractor manages his subcontractor. Does he have the same attitude towards his subcontractor, the same way you have your attitude towards the contractor? So that kind of a thing. And ultimately, how he is training and keeping his contractor employees competent is very important for you to see. Shutdown, startup, and PSSR. I think there are so many things went wrong in Vizag. If they had done a proper PSSR, I think these incidents would have been avoided. Pre-startup safety review. If a plant is under shutdown for 15 days, 1 month, 2 months, please restart the plant. Don't restart the plant without a PSSR, plant safety, plant startup safety review. All that level gauges, interlocks, basically tanks and vessels levels, very, very important. They are notoriously going to fail. And some flow meters may not work, and then you may be thinking you are pumping 100 cubic meter, but it could be even 1,000 cubic meter, and then there may be a overflow. The risk assessment is required separately. Don't depend on your old existing risk assessment. Risk assessment for startup shutdown scenarios are completely different, and you need a special risk assessment to be done for a startup. Corrosion and fouling is another very, very important aspect vis-a-vis process safety management and safe, reliable operations. Internal corrosion, I mean here, the process fluids, metallurgies, and the way you manage on the process flow diagram. There may be no corrosion. The metallurgists may be saying there's no corrosion likely because I already designed that plant with titanium grade B or a monal or a hastelloy. But what type of, how you are managing your process, how much time chlorides are slipping, how many times your chloride treaters are regenerated properly, how you operate the plant is actually can kill your plant. So identify the corrosion and fouling service areas, mark up on the equipment, maybe map up on the field itself, identify these are high corrosion areas, etc. And then identify high point vents and drains where water or chloride or acidic material can stagnate and corrode, deadlets where actually lot of corrosive material can stand, etc., etc. And above all, when you make your corrosion manuals or operating manuals, respect the licenses and vendors' recommendations and suggestions, and then please see that it is incorporated. External corrosion and damage, several times leaks have happened because of external corrosion. That's a very clear sign of a housekeeping or maintenance practice or cost-cutting measures. So you need to watch out for it, and you have to see how your piping and equipment supports are holding. Paints, insulation. Insulation is a big part. How you maintain your insulation. If you don't maintain well, water gets into it during rainy season or during night, moisture gets in, and then it starts corroding inside. And small bore pipings and instrument tubings, they are all various areas where hazards can start. Process hazard analysis, risk management, and ERCPs, emergency response and community development plans are very important. What if studies, there are certain places HAZOB helps, there are certain places HAZID helps, there are some places what if helps. So you need to identify where, what helps where, and apply that particular technique and identify your hazards and do a baseline study and then do repetitive studies and continuously be cautious and keep eye on your hazards. Finally, automation, digitization, robotics. No presentation will be complete if you don't talk about it these days. Everything is digitization, robotics, automation, Industry 4, preventive analytics, and there are a lot of opportunities for safe and reliable operations in applying these technologies. And it's not something new we are talking, it's already happened. Last 5 years back itself, 5-6 years back itself, people have started applying robotics, drones for inspection of the flat tapes and etc. But here I am more excited about digitizing data, plant data, equipment data, and then modeling and creating some twins, or physical twins or certain replicating models, which can actually do prediction of your intended failures. Use your empirical data and then simple statistical models for 1 sigma, 2 sigma, standard deviations, CPK analysis, PPK analysis, and things like that is even enough. If you have today's generation digital technologies, you can do you can have a prediction when the failure is going to happen, and before that you can do a predictive maintenance and come back. And finally, last but not the least, I have been talking a lot about this leadership and culture in a safe and reliable operations. Very, very important. I think this is one-stop go where you do have a good leadership attitude and everything comes in place. All the elements I talked about earlier will automatically come if you have a very good leadership in the place. So it takes a holistic vision for the plant and workout strategies, have 5-year, 3-year plans, and then have an annual plan, then get it down to quarterly, daily, shift-wise plans. The field leadership is walk the talk. Most of the time people, the leaders talk about safety, environment, etc. But mind you, operators and contract labor, everybody is seeing your behavior and what your actions are, and that tells them more than what you told in the meeting, in the toolbox talk, or you come and talked in the town hall topic, or you send a circular. They are all no meaning to them, but they will continuously watch you. If we are going to walk into the plant with a polished Ray-Ban shoe or a normal shoe in the plant, nobody is going to stop you, because in India people will be scared to stop you. But if you walk in the plant with the normal shoe, they know you don't mean business. So it's very important. Walk the talk. It's called felt leadership. And then there's have a proper role definitions and define the roles and responsibilities, and see that people are made competent to perform their roles and responsibilities, and then have proper contracting strategies and respect for environment. So culture, how do you develop the culture is not an easy thing. First of all, you need to have the leadership. They have to have a vision. They need to have, they should define what culture I want. Shall I allow my culture to evolve, or shall I have define a culture and see that my plant people are actually nudged towards that culture gradually? It requires a very, very strategic approach. A 3 to 5 years to 10-year approach is required. That kind of a leadership required perseverance and kind of a robust mindset is required among the leaders. What is culture? Culture is basically an organizational concern. It is a standardized and uniform group behaviors. It is not individuals' behaviors or individual. It's actually a group behavior which has become over a period of time uniform. You go to FCC, you will find the same thing. You go to crude unit, you will see the same thing. You go to finance department, you will find the same thing. Then that means you can say that culture has got set here. So now how to make sure that that culture is fixed? Obviously, you need to work on the behaviors. If you see in that cyclic process there are individual behaviors at the bottom and the team behaviors. Individual behaviors influences team behaviors, and team behaviors in turn influences individual behaviors. You cannot wear a helmet and walk in the plant when everybody is not wearing a helmet. So the team behavior influences you, and you are a little scared. Others will feel, they think I am very smart by wearing helmet and walking in the plant. So individual behavior is influenced here. On the other way, it can be influenced the other way. Nobody is wearing helmet, then the one person wears helmet every day and walks, and then keeps telling others it's good practice to do. And individual behavior influences team behavior. Slowly and slowly it comes in. So individual behavior and team behavior influences each other, and behavior influences habits. It actually automatically becomes a habit. Then habits convert into beliefs, and beliefs convert into values, and values influence behavior. So this is a vicious circle. In this vicious circle, actually transforms into organizational culture in the center. So the game is this: behaviors, habits, beliefs, and values. So how do you go towards the required or desired organizational culture? You enter into individual behavior area. In any plant or a shift, there is a leader, influencer. He is not the leader. Shift superintendent is not the leader. There is a leader. You will know him. You need to get hold of him and then use him to influence the other. So you need to influence through him. Actually, there are various methods through which a desired behavior can be inculcated into the leader or the influencer, who in turn influences the others, and then get into the vicious cycle, and then wait for 1-2 years. But you do it very, very persistently, and then perseverance is very required, and rigorously you need to do it. So that's how you get to your desired culture you want. So final slide, my dear friends, that what is the evidence of a safe, reliable operation? I told you about a lot of elements that is required for safe and reliable operation. But what is the evidence that is required? The evidence is ultimately the lagging parameters I talked. There are hundreds and hundreds of leading parameters which you need to track during shift, day, week, month basis. But ultimately, as an outsider, I will know if a plant is safe or reliable by looking at their fatalities, 0, lost working cases to be 0, medical treatment cases to be 0, or at least year by year it is a continuously reducing trend. Major process safety incidents 0, and minor ones 0, or at least year by year reducing trend. Equipment breakdowns, year by reducing trend, and then ultimately from your GPCB, MPCB or a TNECB, you don't have any authorities giving you show cause notice. That should be zero. That must be zero. There's no reducing trend, because the show cause notice given a second time they may shut down your plant. So it's very important. These are the evidences. Please look for these evidences. Look for the last 2-3 year data. You know what is the status of your safe and reliable operations. So this is with what I have, my dear friends. And Tariq Saab, back to you.
Thank you so much, Baliga Saab, for this wonderful presentation and for all the kind of excellent slides that you had prepared. It was really wonderful. Now, quickly, let me go across to Mr. Sri Kumar to take the questions and post it to the respective speakers. Over to Mr. Sri Kumar.
Yeah, thank you very much, Tariq. And I think we should say the excellent presentation by the team, Mr. Varadarajan, Rajaraman, Balikai, and he has covered entirely through the refineries, prospects, and the future, and the business, and the safety. I think everything has been covered wonderfully well, and with a presentation by every presenter. And I think we have got many questions which has been answered by Varadarajan and others, but still I would like to mention what all the questions which is available in the chat box, so that the speakers can take the replies. Just a minute, I think, yeah. The first question was posted by Mr. Chandrasekhar, and this is regarding the electric, solar, windmill alternatives. Is there any alternative to LPG? That's what he has posted, and probably Varadarajan would be able to answer it.
I'm trying to unmute Mr. Varadarajan.
Varadarajan.
Sir, can you unmute yourself?
Or Rajaraman can.
Yeah, I can unmute now.
Yeah, please. Go ahead, yeah. RC has posted a question first name. I think you might have seen that.
The question of alternate to LPG is like, see, electricity is the immediate replacement to the LPG if we are looking for cooking. But if you are looking for other purposes like industrial use, natural gas is the next best alternative to even for cooking as well as for other chemicals. And that is why most of the crackers in the world are moving towards gas-based crackers or natural gas-based crackers instead of naphtha crackers, depending on the supply or availability.
Yeah. No, is there any alternative for LPG? That's what he asked for.
LPG means it is put to many use. LPG, if it is meant for cooking, natural gas is the best next substitute, which is what most of the industrialized countries are moving towards, natural gas, and with pipeline network and other things. But if it is for the industry, again, natural gas is the best substitute if it is for industrial applications.
The next question is from ATN. I don't know the name of him, but what he says is, what is the supply demand scenario of chemical and the polymer grade polypropylene, propylene in India and other countries?
See, Rajan, I'll take that question. I think generally the chemical grade is going for like phenols and other things, and polymer grade is widely used for all the polypropylene and other usages. And the chemical grade separation or trading is much lower compared to the polymer grade propylene. And this is the scenario almost all over the place. The polymer grades are having a much higher growth. Chemical grade like a phenol plant and other things, 1 or 2 plants, if it comes, it could meet the demand. And China has got a kind of a bigger size plants. India, we are, recently Deepak Phenolics, they started the unit. So in general, if you take it, polymer grade is at a much higher demand rate than chemical grade. I would put it that way.
And the same he added a supplementary question, this ATN name. Where will there be a demand for propylene from FCC in future? He has asked for.
Yeah. See, FCC is one of the now source of propylene making, and that's what it is happening in almost all the Indian refineries. But it can go up to, let us say, 14-15%, or some people, as you go very high, like 18-20%, it will have a other impact in the overall refinery operations with respect to fuel quality and all that. That is why in future, the best efficiency of maximizing the petrochemicals from FCC is FCC plus OCP takes the propylene production to around 25% of the FCC feed typically, which is a greater efficiency achievement. That is what is planning to come in future.
Question from Danshigar 81 Chemical. What be the limitation in exploiting heavy crude availability worldwide, and how is going to happen?
Well, Raja, you want to take this? Or,
yeah, you can take it, Raja. No problem.
See, there was a situation or time when people thought that the heavy crude are going to be giving much more margins than the light crudes. But as much as the industry also has geared up themselves to process heavy crudes now, and most of the refiners are equipping themselves to process heavy crudes, and so that the differential or the margins you expect out of the heavy crudes are not that attractive as you can process the lighter crudes. And also, the investment required to make these heavy crudes economical in their operations is also huge. See, though there are technologies available, all these technologies are not going to be easy. They are all going to be huge investments. So one has to look at the economics, and mainly the economics very critically before deciding what is the best option or what is the best diet for the refinery to sustain. So that will be my advice. Look at the economics carefully. Don't look at just the technology or the apparent margins.
Yeah, thank you. And Manikam Subaya, what will be the outlook of our upstream oil gas project and in the near future, and client expectation from EPC contract? Outlook for upstream oil and gas projects in the future, and client expectation from EPC.
See, what we have heard, at least this is, we have very little kind of insight, deep insight, at least in the, the crude or the gas producing industry. But what is happening is once the shale gas has started coming in and the production, the economics of that below $40 or $45 is a greater pressure for the US producers. And so they need a kind of a price of around $45, a kind of a break even to make more products. But the availability of this condensate and shale gas has become increasingly available, and already a lot of investment has taken place. So the deep sea, kind of investment for getting oil and others has slowed down. That's what we heard. It is all running into a little bit of risk. That's what we are understanding.
And this is from BT Murthy. Chennai Petroleum is proposing expanding to refining capacity. Will it be second generation, third generation, meaning more focus on chemicals instead of conventional fuels?
If I understand, based on the available information, this is if they are talking about the Kaveri Basin refinery. Yes, they are going in for INMAX, technology with the propylene and the polypropylene. But still, that is, as we call it, as the first generation, where the petrochemical content is less than 15% or around 10%. It is much lower than that. I do not I have not heard they're going for any big aromatics or even a cracker as of now. Maybe they are in the plants. So they are still in the process of gasoline and diesel and propylene to a certain extent, but not to a greater extent of petrochemicals. This is what we hear. I don't know. There are other colleagues of mine come from CPCL. Maybe they have some more information. This is what I understand from the projects.
Yeah, there is another question from ATN. Can Kero be routed to FCC along with feed? Will Kero cracking occur in FCC? If so, to what extent?
Kero cracking in FCC, the operating conditions has to be too severe. It doesn't going to happen in the normal operating environment of FCC, because then when it is competing with either the gas oils or heavy ones, their temperature is not sufficient or the partial pressure is not sufficient. And that is why it is not taken as a kind of a feed to FCC. So it needs a separate other cracking.
Next question from Nari Venkat. Is a filament really a big opportunity and natural filaments are getting preferred?
Of course, natural filaments are gaining importance, as you know, everybody prefers that. But the quantum of, the other filament is very high compared to the natural filament usage. And the usage application is also keep on going, from the car industry to fashion industry to many industries. So there is a growth is there in filament, as well as the availability of natural filament has not caught up with the overall demand. So it will take some more years literally to get the natural filament, to capture the overall this yarn.
One is, I think VT Subramaniam question has been answered in the chat box by Varadarajan. Is there anything to be add on? You can. And this is from Balamurgan. What is the scope of bioplastic green, like green polyethylene produced from renewable raw materials from sugarcane?
Yes, that is a trend everybody is talking about now. Renewable plastics are all there, but as it will take some more time. The quantum of that generation and the economics still needs to have a break even. Yes, it is definitely, they are all coming up in a big way. Renewables has got a lot of funding as well as the focus by everybody, including either it is the fuels or the plastics, which has got a much greater economics return. So it will be there, but it will take many years, at least 5 years to 6 years to catch up with the economics. It is still a development stage for economic return. Yeah.
And this is from Technip. I think he has mentioned about his facility available in Dehradun regarding the plastic and fuel conversion. And there is one more question from Tyagarajan. I think this is regarding, I think yes, he has been replied by Mr. Varadarajan, but is there anything to be added on? Then probably Varadarajan can take up that question. Is there any outlook in setting up the following projects in Tamil Nadu? Haldia Kadalur, proposed refinery in Tuticorin, which I think he has already replied partially. Is there anything to be added on, Varadarajan?
No, I don't know. I'm not aware of these projects. Maybe others may know, or some of the participants may know, but I'm not aware of this Tuticorin refinery or. In fact, there are a lot of questions about as if where are we in terms of this when it comes to petrochemicals. See, our refineries, including some of the most sophisticated or integrated refineries like the Reliance Jamnagar complex, they are still in the first generation. They are not even into the second. So when you talk about the third generation, it's still on the paper. So all these things, one thing is very, very critical, that these are all the add-on technologies which are there, they are not very simple, or it's all huge investments. So one has to look into this very, very critically, and there will be huge investments required, and also there will be a lot of associated OPEX also will be high. So one has to look at it as from a scale perspective. So these has to be on a very large scale units. It cannot be the old 50,000 barrels per day refineries and all those things. So the scale is very important. The synergies is very important. And also the ability to do with an integration with the downstream units is also very, very critical. So even now the third generation is being thought about or even being planned by the companies like Aramco and all. And whereas the second generation is just coming out of the drawing board, or it is getting into the site, it is not even implemented. It will take another 2 years to set up that complex. So the one message is technologies are available, but make it viable to our requirement. Like especially India is not a very manufacturing base. So that is what is very critical, and one has to look at it from that perspective.
Yeah, Mr. Murli from AT Chemical, and he has said that we see tremendous opportunities in Africa. I am associated with Kevin Engineering. With my refinery exposure, African countries are far behind the quality of fuels. Already Cameroon and Nigeria.
No, I have answered that question.
Is there anything to be covered on that? You can take up that question.
And I've also introduced him to the guy whom he can talk to in case if he wants to pursue. Or Raja can add if he knows anything about the African countries.
1 minute. I think there are many other questions.
I think we crossed 1 o'clock. It is lunch.
Okay.
We're reading up on the lunchtime of many
No,
of the
one question I'll take it from Arama Subramaniam. What is the future of refining in India since transportation fuel demand is likely to reduce in the future with EV? Crude to chemicals, do you expect many such plants in the future?
At least as we hear from IOCs and Reliance, they are already embarking on petrochemical expansion. The IOC chairman has announced, as well as the Reliance has got embarked on petrochemical growth. And we see a lot of petrochemical projects that is being discussed. You know, we see GAIL talking about on-purpose propylene. There are crackers that is being packed by Haldia Petrochemicals. IOC has got Paradeep expansions. BPCL has got that expansion of cracker. So all moving towards petrochemical, but only materialization time is taking. That's what I would say.